Hey there, welcome back to The Empowered Edge, the podcast where we unlock your best self through optimal health, a resilient mindset, and lasting habits. I'm your host, Jenna Hostetler, and today we're talking about something that will literally make or break your success in every area of life: commitment. And I'm not talking about halfway commitment, where you're sort of in, sort of out, and constantly debating if you should stick with it or not. I'm also not talking about forever commitment, where you're stuck with a decision for the rest of your life. I'm talking about being 100% committed to whatever you choose, making a decision once and sticking to it no matter how you feel in the moment. Because believe it or not, 100% commitment is easier than 99%. And today, I'm going to prove it to you. Now, whether you know this or not, commitment is binary. You either have it or you don't. You either are or you aren't. There is no middle ground. If you're only 90% committed, you're not actually committed. You're just trying. And while it can feel good to try, we end up creating room for doubt, negotiation, and excuses, which means we justify inaction. Saying, well, I tried, becomes a scapegoat for inaction and a justification for a lack of results. Now, judge me all you want, but I've never seen a full Star Wars movie. I've seen barely 15 minutes of maybe one. But one day at work, years ago, when I was cruising the aisles of Durr Road Kroger, I saw a can koozie with Yoda on it that said, "Do or do not, there is no try." And my first thought was, Star Wars was actually good for something. Because if we're trying, we're not committing. And there are very few circumstances when we should even utter the word try, because it screws us up so much into convincing ourselves that our lack of progress is okay because we tried. Now, you can try out a new diet, but you either follow it or you don't. If someone says, "I'm trying to do Whole30, what they mean is, I said I would do it, and I thought I would do it, but so far I'm not doing it. I'm not actually committed, I'm just doing it when it's convenient. You don't try to go to the gym, you either go or you don't. You don't try to wake up at 6 o'clock and do daily devotions, you say you will, and you either follow through or you don't. You don't try to yell at your kids less, you're either yelling at them less or you're not. Maybe at first you're mindful of how much yelling you do, and that allows you to see how you can start yelling less, but you don't try it, you do it or you don't. You can try something out. You can do a trial run to see if it gets you the results you want before committing long term. But even when you're trying something out, you don't then try to do it. You either do the thing you're testing or you don't. If you're married, I want you to imagine your spouse being committed to your marriage only when things are easy. What would your marriage look like? How long would it last? Now, I've been to plenty of weddings, and I do not know about you, but I've never heard the pastor say, "Do you solemnly swear to take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, unless she's being obnoxious and you don't really feel like it that day?" Well, no, because that's not commitment, that's convenience. And if we only ever did what was convenient or what we wanted to do, then our entire life would depend on our emotions. And to be totally honest here, that's a pretty pathetic way to live. See, the problem with partial commitment based on emotions or convenience, is that it creates a constant internal battle. Your mind is always trying to figure out if you're actually going to follow through this time or if you can justify a way out. You wake up and think, do I feel like working out today? Or you sit down at a restaurant and you think, should I order this or should I stick to my plan? And that mental back and forth is exhausting. If you've ever experienced it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But when you're 100% committed, there is no negotiation. There's no internal back and forth battle. You decide once and you stick to it. It becomes automatic. It's not up for debate anymore, and that makes life so much easier. Here's the crazy part. Being 100% committed actually makes life easier and simpler than being partially committed. Actually, that's not true. Commitment is in either or, which means being committed is easier than being wishy-washy because partial commitment doesn't exist. When you're almost committed, that 99% commitment that feels really good because you can act like you're all in, but you have a back door when life gets hard. When you're that type of committed, you are constantly having to make decisions. Every situation requires you to weigh your options, consider the consequences, justify the choice you make, and then convince yourself that you did the right thing. And that burns a lot of mental energy. Thoughts require glucose. So imagine your brain literally working out every time you go through this process to make a decision. That's why it's so exhausting. That's why decision fatigue exists. But when you're 100% committed, the decision's already made. There is no room for debate. You don't decide if you're going to go to the gym, you just go. You don't decide if you're sticking to your meal plan, you just follow it. You don't decide if you're showing up for your business, you just do it. 100% commitment removes the emotional resistance because you've already decided how you're going to act. The decision is made once, not over and over again. You've decided in advance, and because you know you're going to honor whatever you choose, there's nothing to think about. You just do. You eliminate decision fatigue, which allows your brain to think of other things. Imagine having a finite amount of glucose you can use each day for thinking. Do you want to spend all of it on deciding whether to eat pancakes or eggs for breakfast? What would your life look like if you had the capacity to be creative, solve stubborn problems, and have real conversations with people instead of crashing late afternoon because your brain's already worn out from all the decisions I had to make that day? Those emotionally exhausting decisions because of the battle between what you said you would do and what you want to do. What would you be capable of if your incredible brain had the opportunity to do incredible things because its potential wasn't wasted on fighting with itself over your desire to have a six-pack while refusing to do a 10-minute Pilates YouTube video in the comfort of your own living room? Not to mention the time that is wasted debating whether or not to get up and do whatever you told yourself you would. I mean, more often than not, in the time we spend debating to do the thing or not, we could have just done the thing. But instead of just doing it, Nike knew what they were talking about when they made that, by the way. Instead of just doing it, we fight the internal battle, we justify inaction, and then we're left disappointed in ourselves and even more tired than when we started thinking about the thing. It really is a ridiculous cycle when you think about it. Now let's be real. Most of us back out of commitments because we let our emotions get in the way. We're tired, we're stressed, we're overwhelmed, or we're just not in the mood. So we decide to skip the workout, eat the junk food, or hit snooze instead of showing up. Instead of being a person of our word and someone who can be trusted, we become someone who's controlled by how we feel. But here's the beautiful thing. The reality that should have you beaming with excitement. Commitment doesn't care how you feel. I learned this from a leadership training I did a few years ago, and I don't remember who said it, but one of the coaches laid out commitment like this. You can be tired and still be committed. You can be angry and still be committed. You can be sad and still be committed. You can be scared and still be committed. You can be happy, you can be stressed, you can be unmotivated and still be committed. You can be restful and still be committed. You can be connected with friends and family and still be committed. Commitment is simply deciding in advance how you're going to act and then following through no matter what. While your feelings are valid, they don't get to decide your actions. When we choose to allow our emotions to dictate our behavior, we're essentially saying, I'll have a good day if no one annoys me. I'll be productive as long as the sun is shining. I will do my morning workout if I slept great. I will stick to my meal plan as long as no one tempts me with anything else. And when you hear those phrases, you're probably thinking that it sounds absurd and no one can possibly go through life that way. But if you watch people's behavior, if you watch your own behavior, and you put words to what you see people doing, then you'll find that it's very common for people to go through life this way and have no clue that they're allowing their uncontrollable external circumstances to control their life. And that's the power of commitment. It allows you to rise above your emotional state and take action anyway. Because when you really think about it, the opposite of commitment is victim. If we take those statements and we rephrase them, we get, I had a bad day because someone said or did something I didn't like. I could not be productive because the weather was dreary. I couldn't do my morning workout because I didn't sleep good. I cannot stick to my meal plan because there's so much tempting food around. Now, as you're hearing this, you might start to get a little defensive because those can seem like legitimate excuses. And I'm here to challenge that belief. Is it a legit reason or is it an excuse? Are you committed to making it work no matter what, or are you more committed to finding legit reasons why it can't work, so that when you fail, it's not your fault? And this goes back to extreme ownership that we talked about way back in episode 1. So if you're feeling like this whole idea of commitment just took a wrong turn, I invite you to go back to episode 1 and learn how you can get excited over extreme ownership, which is the sister to commitment. Now, in addition to those examples I just gave, the other reason most people shy away from commitment is because it feels restrictive, like there's a permanence, and once you get in, you can never get out. And that is 100% false. I gave the example of marriage earlier, and while marriage is a lifelong commitment, there are commitments that are short-term or seasonal. Commitment doesn't mean forever. It means following through 100% on whatever you've chosen to do. People tend to be scared of losing their freedom if they say they're committed, if they go all in, and if they learn to be disciplined. But the truth is, Discipline creates freedom. When you commit to something fully, you free yourself from the mental chaos of decision making. You don't waste time debating or feeling guilty about what you should be doing. You know exactly what needs to be done, and you do it because you already decided you would. You've already done the work of making the plan. The hard part's done. Let the execution be easy. When you commit to a way of eating, you free yourself from obsessing over food. When you commit to a workout, you free yourself from feeling guilty when you skip a day. When you commit to your business, you free yourself from wondering if you are cut out for success. Discipline and commitment are what allow you to create a life that works for you because you've already decided what that life looks like. And here's the best part. You get to choose what you're committed to. Being 100% committed does not mean being 100% perfect. You can commit to eating healthy 6 days a week and giving yourself permission to have flexibility on the 7th. That's still 100% commitment because you've defined the terms up front. The problem comes when you're unclear about the terms of your commitment. It's like signing up for a program and not knowing what the terms are, what you just signed up for. You don't know what to do because you don't know the expectations. And when you leave room for uncertainty, you leave room for excuses. So the important question to ask is, what are you actually committed to? And are you truly 100% in, or are you leaving yourself an escape route? If you've been living in the gray area of kind of committed, this is your opportunity to recognize it and choose to show up differently. Now, I'm not going to act like I have it all together because I for sure don't, but my tolerance for excuses is far less than it ever used to be, and I'm now able to recognize it and shift much quicker. And that's the other beautiful thing about commitment that I don't think most people realize. You can shift at any point. If it's not working, adjust. No one said you have to stay committed to a broken system, but if you don't commit to begin with, you'll never know what works and you'll never know what needs to shift so that you can get the results you're working for. You'll be floating from one program to the next, one meal plan to the next, one mastermind to the next, one job to the next, and you'll never know what works because you never committed long enough to figure it out. Talk about a recipe for mental exhaustion and frustration. You have the power to make a decision and stick to it. And if you don't, that's your choice too. But you get to own that choice and own the consequences instead of falling into victim mindset and of things never working out. Partial commitment leads to partial results. Uncertainty leads to inconsistency. But 100% commitment leads to success. Because commitment doesn't require motivation. It just requires a decision. Here's what I want you to do this week. Identify one goal you've been halfway committed to. Decide what 100% commitment looks like for that goal. Follow through for 1 week, no excuses and no renegotiating. And then at the end of the week, reflect on how it felt to be fully committed and decide how you'll move forward. When you make the decision to go all in, you'll be amazed at how much easier life becomes. So if you're ready to stop towing the line of commitment and start seeing real results, this is where it begins. Make the decision once, follow through every time, and watch how your life changes. If you want a framework for choosing a goal to commit to, head down to the show notes and download Goal Getter. I hope you found this episode helpful. Next week, we are going to look at this through the lens of health, and I'm going to give you practical application of what we just talked about today. So tune in next week, and until then, take action, stay empowered, and I will see you in the next episode.